I didn't have an episode last week for a number of reasons. Probably largest of all was the fact that we had a pretty bad snowstorm here in the northeastern region of these great United States in which we live, or which I live, at least anyway. I don't know where you live. You could be living anywhere on this damn planet. But we had a pretty bad snowstorm. Where I was, I think it snowed probably 6 to 7. 6, 7. I can't believe I just did that. Damn stuff. Probably 7 inches of snow. And then it followed up with about 2 to 3 inches of solid ice on top of it. So this snow, the snow was landing. It became a winter wonderland of sorts. I love snow. I'm cool with snow. And then it transitioned to literally sleet, ice, freezing rain, whatever you want to call that, Jots. Literally the next day, I went outside and I could not walk anywhere because it was a frozen tundra it was Greenland. And by the way, after seeing this and living in it for an entire week, it has been an entire week since the snowstorm. And I still can't walk anywhere. I have an acre of land. We have an acre of land. I still can't walk anywhere on my acre of land without it being a solid sheet of ice. This is bullshit, I tell you. Bullshit. Let's talk about this and a bunch of other stuff. I cue the intro. I thought all the ice was in Minnesota, but apparently it's not. Bad joke. Yeah, it's a bad joke, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that kind of ice too. But first, back to this ice. When having lived through this for an entire week, and it's still here. I'm only now just able to chip away at the driveway. Started doing that this morning, and for context, by the way. For context, why I'm a little hung up on this nonsense, I'm going to read something from the governor of my state in a few minutes. But this ice has been ridiculous, and this really makes me wonder, having walked around in it for a week, why the hell we have any interest in Greenland whatsoever. I mean, this sucks. This sucks. I love snow. I love the weather like this. Probably comes with, being in a comfortable position now where my offices will close and I just won't go to work in it. Except that only happened for one day, and we'll discuss more about that in a moment. But the amount of ice is just ridiculous. All right, I've never seen so much goddamn ice in my life, and there was nothing that you could do to get rid of it. So people who trying to clear out your driveway. Yes, I get some basics. I get some basic stuff. Okay. Snowstorm's coming. You got to go out and shovel your driveway, your sidewalks, whatever. You have to continually stay on top of it so that it doesn't become a problem. Except you can't really do anything if it just turns to ice. You can't really do anything if it just goes that way. And that's the point that we got at. And, I mean, somebody in the neighborhood, he just so happens to be my supervisor, lives in the back of the neighborhood. And he came, with his tractor to shovel my sidewalk, or to shovel my... I don't have a sidewalk. I have a really long driveway, though. Because this isn't a traditional neighborhood. Because everybody has roughly an acre and some change of land on their property, or as their property, rather. But he came and he plowed it once mid-storm. Probably not a good idea in retrospect. But when it all turned to ice, I mean, like, literally everything was ice. I stepped out, my car, my wife's van, encased in ice. My car, which is a 2006 Toyota Solara convertible, was covered in ice. Luckily, no damages to my roof, thank God. But encased in ice. Encased in a solid block of ice. Like, you couldn't open the door because if you went to open the door handle anyway, it was thick ice. All over. All over. And when ice is that built up, it doesn't matter. You can throw down salt or de-icer or whatever. You can throw that stuff down. And it will work as long as the temperature doesn't go down below, like 20 or 15 degrees, I think is what most of those bags say, right? So we had this snowstorm, and we had the ice to finish off the snowstorm. And then we proceeded this week to not have one single day go above 20 degrees. So nothing was melting in the terms of what usually happens. We can have bad snowstorms here. We've had bad snowstorms here. I've lived through many a bad snowstorm. It's bad for a day or two. And then within 2 days of that storm, it warms up to above 32 degrees. Stuff starts melting. Roadways are cleared and all that. That wasn't the case here. That was not the case here because you walked outside. You could not do a damn thing to your driveway unless you had a flat head metal shovel and wanted to sit there and chip and chip and chip away at shit for hours on end to maybe be lucky enough to reveal your pavement. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is pretty bad. Like, the office is probably going to be closed for the remainder of the week. Now this is where the illustrious governor of Delaware comes into play. So Delaware schools for the better part of this last week remain closed for the week. Okay, so this is an unprecedented storm. Delaware really hasn't faced something of this magnitude that often. And the storm finished up with literally 2 inches of ice, thereabouts. Okay, so I'm not exaggerating that bit. Monday was a wash. Nobody was going to do shit on Monday. And nobody did shit on Monday. Perfectly fine. Perfectly good with that. Governor Matt Meyer posted on his correspondence, so his social media stuff. My wife shared this with me to get my thoughts on it. So it says, quote, "It is unacceptable that schools remain closed a week after the last snowflake fell at Delaware. I have spent the last several days directing state agencies to do everything possible to get our kids back in school. DelDOT is working with school districts to clear roads, sidewalks, and bus stops, no matter where they are. Something that hasn't been done in recent history. I've also personally spoken with each Newcastle County superintendent and received lists of roads, sidewalks, and bus stops that remain unsafe. DelDOT is clearing them this weekend. To every parent and family, please know the state of Delaware is doing everything possible through the weekend to ensure schools are open on Monday morning. Delaware was coated in more snow and ice than at any time in the last decade. Dedicated public servants have worked hard to salt roads and sidewalks, and we continue to thank them for their service. But that's also meant a week of lost instruction time for students. I am the governor of Delaware, but I am a public school parent first, and we should all expect our government at every level to work for us and our kids." Take a moment off your high horse there, bub. As you stated, it was unprecedented. So the fact that we're sitting here saying that the fact that schools remained closed a week after the last snowflake fell, stop. It was ice that ended that storm. Ice. Ice is a bigger problem. Ice causes a lot of problems in multiple forms, apparently. Bad joke. I digress. However, to go on this big public rant about how it's unacceptable that the kids weren't at school all week, bro, we lived through the pandemic era where people weren't allowed to go out in public for months on end, mind you. Stop with the theatrics. It was a bad ice storm. It's still, I can go out and skate in my front fucking yard. Okay? After it becomes ice, you really can't do anything in it. It's not like you can plow it up off the roads because it'll damage plows. So, and it didn't go above like 20 degrees this week. So, what are you getting at? Like, neighborhoods went unplowed and are ice skating rinks. Really, really tone-deaf messaging from a guy who, for lack of a better term, I think just wants to be liked by everybody. Well, I'm here to tell you, nerd, no, not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like you. And I don't try to like disparage people. Like, obviously, I don't give politicians benefit of the doubt anymore. Nor do I think you deserve the benefit of the doubt in the position. But this was like one of those things where it was crazy all around. It was crazy, and I think the most important thing is safety being paramount in that. So when you have an unprecedented storm of that magnitude, you get a lot of ice dumped on you. Patience, I think, is more the key. I would have been praising the fact that people were living through treacherous conditions this past week rather than, sorry your kids couldn't go to school and that must have been annoying for you. I mean, that's what I got out of that. I don't think my kid got robbed of a week of education from our hustling and bustling educational system. It's not the takeaway that I had from it, but my God, that's part of it. But that's in part. I had to read that. I'm sorry. We got through it though. That's part of the reason why there wasn't an episode last week, because we were snowed in. We weren't doing the normal thing that we do here. So the way that the way that I set time to record the program that works for everybody is that my wife takes our two older daughters and goes to a friend's house, so they get some playtime with their kids over there. My son is in his nap right now, and that frees up some time for Daddy to sit down at a computer and rant a little bit about whatever he wants to rant about. That wasn't happening last week, and I didn't have interest in it last week. My interest last week was, you know what? There's snow falling. My kids are here. We're stuck. We're not going anywhere. We're going to have some fun. And we did. Normally there's these hills that are in the front of my neighborhood that I would take my kids sledding down. We have a couple of sleds, and every year since we moved into this house, there's been enough snow to the degree that I could take my kids to the hill at some point during the season to sled them down the hill. And I had to have a conversation with my oldest daughter, who's 6, this time because I was not getting us over to those hills for sledding because of how bad things were. And she got upset. She got upset about, but you said we were going to go to the hills. And I was like, oh, hold on, because I never actually said we were going to the hills. I said, let's see if we could go to the hills. Anyway, they learned a different style of sledding this past week, which was, Daddy, sit your butt in the little snow toboggan thing, and I'm just gonna push you across the yard, and you're gonna scoot by. And after she figured that out, guess what she was doing for the rest of this week? She could still do it today if she wanted to do it today. Run across the yard, jump into the thing, and just glide across the ice because it's fucking everywhere. My God. So that put me into thinking about what this episode was going to be, because last week was a wash. I knew I wasn't going to do an episode, and because of the conditions and going back and forth, it's been hard to sit down and kind of write out an episode. So last episode, we went on, a trip in the DeLorean, and we went back to Boston, and I made that crafted out that little episode where we went over the Boston Massacre, and then we talked about rising tensions and, things that built into, this epic explosion of a moment. And every once in a while, you're going to get that from me on this program. I like doing that every once in a while. So that was in response to the ICE shooting of Renee Good. Then we had Alex Preddy, and Alex Preddy opened up a whole nother big can of worms in this whole mess of things going on. Now, I'm not going to sit here and break down and analyze that event to the extent that I did with Renee Good. I'm not going to craft some episode where we go over rising tensions, historically speaking, either. And I really don't want to focus a lot on this conversation in terms of ICE and Alex Preddy. And this is me on the fly. Okay, I don't have notes here. I don't have a lot of detail, or I don't have my show notes in front of me for this to discuss this. I can reiterate some things from that I stated from last episode, and reiterating some things that consistently seem to come up when we're talking about ICE. What do we do with immigration in America? What do we do with upholding people's rights and all that stuff? There's a million things that we could talk about with this Alex Preddy situation. Probably the biggest thing that comes to mind is messaging from the government, and that's part of the reason why I read Matt Meyer's little spiel about being angry and upset that the roads weren't plowed well enough in a freaking ice storm, of all things. But part of the thing that I've been hating is the messaging. And it's not one particular side of the spectrum that I can point to when it comes to criticizing messaging. The thing to me is to focus on who is actually in control, who has the power right now. And that's Donald Trump's administration. And Donald Trump's administration hasn't been shy on immediately coming out when something like this has happened. So we've had Renee Good now, and now we've had Alex Preddy. What is the response from Kristi Noem? It's to come out and say domestic terrorism, domestic terrorist, bad people, try to paint those people in a bad picture, completely back and double down on the ICE agents and what they're doing. That's the messaging that comes across. Couple that with certain facts here, right? Alex Preddy was armed at a protest. Kash Patel came out and said that you're not allowed to be armed at a protest. Shouldn't that have made every 2A conservative, Republican, whomever, shouldn't that have made anybody that cares about the Second Amendment go, excuse me, what? Like, what did you just say? Did you say that a constitutional right is negotiable in depending on the circumstances? Because that's not good messaging. That is dangerous messaging. To say that constitutional rights are conditional based on situations. Because that's not really how it works. Not really how it works. And this came into play with, there was a protest group. Don Lemon recently got arrested because he was with this protest group, whether he was with this protest group or merely documenting what was going on with this protest group. I don't know the details of that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know the details of that. I do know that this protest group went into a church during a church service of sorts. Can't recall whether it was on a Sunday or not. Doesn't really matter when it was. But because the protest group went into the church service, and I believe it was because they believed or suspected that the pastor or somebody that was with that church organization was also an ICE agent or worked for DHS or ICE in some capacity. Okay, I can pick this one apart because do you have a First Amendment right to protest? Yes, you do. You have a constitutionally protected right to protest peacefully. Are you peacefully protesting if you enter a church and disrupt the service, though? Ooh, not really. Not really, because the First Amendment also states that you have freedom of religion and freedom to practice religion. So if you go into a service building, a church service building, which some people would probably say, well, they're a public building, but they're not. They're not a public building. The churches probably say that they're open for the public, but they're not. They're organizations that people are members of, and they go attend church. The church might have a policy of welcoming people in, but if a protest goes into a church and disrupts the service, well, now we're talking about they've basically, like, there's no other way to say it other than you infiltrated an organization and you disrupted it. So now you have actively violated other people's right to be there and have their service, and you've disrupted it, thinking that your First Amendment right trumps their First Amendment right. Now we're in like hairy territory. Now, are we in hairy territory with Don Lemon being arrested? Possibly. I can't. I have not had the time to fully research that angle of it, but this plays into something much, much larger that I am building into. And that is in this discussion of what's going on with ICE. Some people don't like they either don't like or they're surprised by my stance on ICE. I am a limited government individual. I am critical of the government because if the government is going to have power, we should be critical of the power, of the structure, of the people, all of that. Like, we should have that skepticism. It's healthy. It's healthy to have that skepticism. It's why the founders built it that way. Probably could have a much larger discussion about it. But that's my first and foremost goal. I know through the research that even with the Somali issue that had come to light and the arrests that have been made in allegations of fraud, abuse coming out of Minnesota. If we're objectively speaking, I mean, like, this is not groundbreaking or like shocking news. But you can go and you can read up on a large amount of Somali-involved people who have, over the course of the past year or so, been arrested for this fraud. Some of which have been convicted or pled guilty on these allegations of fraud or whatever. Like, that's an angle that's here. I also know that Minnesota is like on the list of analyzed places where there is illegal immigration problems, is way down there on the list. I don't know exactly where it's ranked, but it is well and behind Texas, California, and some other states in the United States, which begs the question, why is there like a 2,000 plus disbursement of ICE agents in Minnesota if they are on the very, very low end of the spectrum when we're talking about numbers? Now, interesting enough, as I've dived into some data and some things going on, we have to look at both sides of the spectrum here in this discussion. I know that one of the grievances of the Trump administration, or the DOJ or DHS rather, overseeing ICE and operations, is that they say that Minnesota is not complying with assisting ICE. And we've had Mayor Jacob Pry of Minneapolis. Minneapolis. I keep saying like Minneapolis. Minnesota. That Jacob Fry has come out and said, F ICE, we're not complying with this, that, and the third thing. And I talked about that in the last episode. If localities are going to say, we're not enforcing federal law, F you, come and do it, and then they come and do it, I mean, you asked for the agents to come and do it then. That's one angle, right? There's this other angle. State prisons, for example. Most state prisons across the United States comply with this quote-unquote working relationship with ICE. That is to say, if in a state prison system, let's say somebody is arrested on the street, in effecting that arrest, this is the police now. This is the police of the state. They arrest an individual because they committed a crime. Like they stole, they murdered, they raped, whatever it is. They got booked on a crime. They got arrested for whatever many number of things that you could get arrested for. When they bring them in, run their prints to verify their identity, that person comes up with an ICE warrant or an ICE detentioner because their status isn't legal for one reason or another. So they're violating some aspect, either criminally or civilly, from ICE. They have hits on this person. Well, then the state prison calls up ICE and says, hey, we brought this guy in. We ran his prints. We see that there's an ICE hold that you have warrants for him. Do you want to come and get him? And ICE will typically be like, yep, we'll be there this day. So the state holds that person in the state system. ICE comes, picks him up, takes him out, and then is processed on the federal side of things. It's typically what happens. Usually the state systems are following suit with that. To my understanding, Minneapolis is not Minnesota, not like the state prisons are, but there's different cities or localities that aren't doing that process. And that's one of the things that the Trump administration wants. So this becomes, a larger argument of, people who are protesting, what is it that they're protesting? Are they protesting ICE tactics? Are they protesting ICE administration? Are they protesting the whole thing in general? And unfortunately, it just feels like we don't have adults having discussions right now. And so, yeah, I mean, like, Trump sent Tom Homan there. Now, Tom Homan, some people might have short memories, might not know, but Tom Homan was part of the Obama administration from 2014 to 2016. And then he continued on in Trump's first administration. During Barack Obama's administration, like, Barack Obama had a lot of deportations under his belt. There was actually a time where he was being called the deporter in chief because of how many deportations were going on. But optics matter. So Tom Homan, when he was in the Obama administration, actually came up with the idea about the separating children from their parents as a means to discourage illegal immigration, which some people may or may not remember. He came up with that idea while he was in the Obama administration. But he was sent to try to quell tensions going on there. But other mixed messaging that has come into play. When you have Kash Patel talking about rights are conditional because you can't bring a gun to a protest. And now the fact that he was armed at a protest is so bad, but we're not going to talk about guys that were at January 6th that were armed. Or we won't talk about other incidents like Clive Bundy. Like Clive Bundy and the armed standoff back in 2014 against the Bureau of Land Management over federal land and Bundy grazing his cattle on federal land and all that jazz. Conservatives won't talk about those instances. Or even worse is with this Alex Preddy case that draws in some similarities with like back in the Black Lives Matter riots, where Kyle Rittenhouse, being 17 years old, running around with an AR on the grounds of where protests were occurring, and whether or not that was smart or not. Those are things that we won't talk about when it comes to this. The other bits that I have to say about ICE in these situations is the more of the rhetoric that comes from the administration that's there. Like I said, Minnesota is on the smaller scale of issues dealing with immigration, where I feel as though it's like a targeted area to try to intimidate other states and other, let's face it, blue governors and blue mayors across the United States. I feel like this was a targeted operation that's far more politically motivated than it is to actually deal with an illegal immigration problem. And the other fact of the matter is that there's internal memos that got sent through ICE about how, you don't need warrants to go through doors and other things of that nature, where at the end of the day, like, benefit of the doubt does not go to the government. As citizens, we never should have benefit of the doubt go to the government. There is no, hey, what they're doing is okay. Maybe they make a mistake and we don't hold them accountable for that because mistakes happen and things like that. Like, this is just a bad place to be. It's a very, very bad place to be. But I can't focus all my attention on it because it is something that it's something that's eating at me a little bit. And, it feels like the wheels are spinning right now, and not to mention the fact that every single program is talking about it. But I figured I had to get some of my thoughts out on that while I had the opportunity to get my thoughts out on that. Another thing that's been on my mind lately, and it's only really because I listened to this forum, the Soho Forum debate, which is run by libertarians, where they debate topics Usually somebody's in favor of whatever the topic is, and somebody's opposed to it. And this is probably one of the few debate things that I'll watch or that I'll listen to. You can watch it too. They do post it on YouTube. But if I haven't discussed it enough, or if I haven't talked about it enough, like, I think nowadays we don't have a lot of debates. People have a really, really, really bad time listening to people. People don't listen with the intent to hear and try to understand what the person is saying. They listen with the intent of responding to the person and coming up with their own counter arguments. And this is what happens. People are deeply ingrained in things that they believe, and things of that nature. So that's what people have on their minds. That's what people get on their minds. They get caught up in these things. So, like, Jubilee is junk. Surrounded is junk. It's one expert versus 20 know-nothings. Let's clickbait, rage bait, argue about shit and get nowhere. Soho Forum debate is far more this person gets 15 minutes to discuss the subject at hand. The counter person gets 15 minutes. Then there is a cross-examination of the two, kind of, with the moderator leading. Then it's open to Q&A from the audience for either or both participants, and then at the end they vote on who won the debate. This is far more substance than a lot of other things. It's kind of nerdy. But I was listening to an episode earlier while I was busting my ass breaking ice in my driveway earlier today, a week after a freaking ice storm. And it was, will AI benefit everyone? And this is a very, very big topic right now because of the AI boom that has been happening over the last 2 to 3 years, this boom in AI. I'm no stranger to AI, okay? The music that you hear open this program every week is generated from Suno AI, because I've had a Suno AI account for probably a year or two now, because I just wanted to test it out. Like, it was like, oh, hey, it's this music app. You can type up a prompt, you can type up lyrics, and it will spit out a song. It'll spit out a full-length song in about 30 seconds. And I was like, there's no way that this does this. And so I started doing it because I've done many a parody of songs in my day. I'm not going to say that I'm a Weird Al or whatever, but I have written goofy and comedic lyrics to tunes that are already set and things like that. So I wanted to test it out. I can string together. I can be poetic. I can do this kind of stuff. So I started stringing together, and I've made songs on Suno AI, which maybe that pisses some people off. Maybe there's some artists out there who are like, maybe there's musicians out there who are like, this is the bane of my existence because this thing can just poop out a song. And some people do refer to most AI content as poop, just junk that comes out. But there's some good stuff. I've heard some good songs made from Suno AI that you can't help but be impressed with how the technology has crafted or made, this music, which it hasn't completely done on its own. I know there's controversial aspects of licensing, mimicry, outright stealing, other people's creations and stuff. I know it's the same way with the image generators. And then I am 100% guilty of this. Sora, 100% guilty of using Sora. I have made hundreds of Sora videos. If you follow my YouTube channel, which it's linked in the show notes, so if you find me on YouTube, please follow me on YouTube. But I started making historical content shorts with Sora because I wanted to do, like, I'm kind of obsessed with the Civil War period of American history. So I've always had these stupid ideas for sketches of, like going through the American Civil War. And I want them to be, educational. I want them to, teach you something. I want them to be not completely made up or fabricated, but I want to put a comedic spin on them. So recently, going to my phone now, because I actually have to look this up because I'm not sure what I put up last. But if I go to my videos here, among the last videos that I put up, I did one where on the January 27th, 1862, Lincoln issues General War Order Number 1. And it was all about how he was dissatisfied. He was unhappy with Union generals and the fact that they did not move. They did not pursue attacking Confederates at the chances that they had. They did not engage in battles enough. So Lincoln was pissed off. So I made a little clip where Lincoln is with Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, and he's just basically cussing him out. He's like, I want these lazy-ass generals to move, damn it. And Stanton's like, well, by when? Do you have a deadline or whatever? And he goes, February the 22nd, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a stupid, goofy little thing that, spit out in Sora in less than a minute to get the point across, to, give you the historical, give you a little learning. That was one of the last ones I posted up. I have another one. I have this whole series of Burnside going through Fredericksburg and the big Fredericksburg disaster. Because I think they're goofy, right? I think they're goofy. I think they're fun. I don't have all these cameras, all these period costumes, and a studio in which I could film these stupid little sketches. So some people are probably going to say, well, that's just lazy. You're just lazy. So, F you for using this stuff. I think that this is like perfect AI use. Doing goofy little songs on Suno. Doing goofy little clips on Sora. That can just be funny. They're just for yucks. Is it wasteful? Probably. There's apparently a lot of energy waste goes into this stuff. That's another debate that we could have with this topic. But Andrew Heaton, he's somebody that I listen to and follow with this on his Substack, which, by the way, we are on Substack as well. Link will be in the show notes as well. So if you want to join me on Substack, I'm not charging anything right now. It's free. Just follow along with me. Have some fun. Andrew Heaton put out on his Substack, let me see if I can find it exactly. Here's exactly what he asked. He said, what are some AI life hacks you've implemented recently? I, quote unquote, made a program to scrub events websites so I can quickly see stuff that I can do in my city. So I replied to Heaton and basically laid out some hacks that I do, right? ChatGPT. I have ChatGPT on my phone. I use ChatGPT not frequently, but I use it for some things. One thing that I use ChatGPT for is for journaling what I've read, what book I'm reading. I'll read a couple of chapters or a chapter or two, and then I get on ChatGPT and I say, hey, Chat, I'm reading this book. This is what happened in the last chapter. Here's some key takeaways that I think I need to remember. Can you do that for me? And ChatGPT replies, of course, and says, yes, here's the key takeaways. I've journaled it for you. It's accessible. And then I can just go in my ChatGPT app and access that. And I can continually add to it. So then I can ask for it to give me a too long didn't read, or just hit me with the highlights of what that was. It helps me keep things straight. It does help me keep things straight. Sometimes ChatGPT helps me think outside the box as well. It's just another way. But more importantly, I got my wife for Christmas this freaking digital calendar. All right, it's a skylight calendar. And when she first told me she wanted this calendar, I was a little bit skeptical of things because I'm like, it's a digital calendar. It's kind of nerdy. And also it's, it's expensive. It's not cheap. I'm sure there's some overpricedness to it. I'm sure that you can get the same effect of some stuff for cheaper than it because it's not the name brand product or whatever. But in any case, I got her the Skylight calendar. One of the reasons that she wanted the Skylight calendar, besides like laying out the week and being able to visualize and see everything, is the fact that there's this function with Skylight that does, like, it can help you do meal planning. So this function is called Sidekick, and it's AI. It's AI that's built into the calendar programming or whatever. And basically, it's like it's AI powered meal planning, event scheduling, and recipe imports. And I'm telling you right now, in the short amount of span of time that we've had this thing, I love this thing. Probably the best out of all the I use. You've already heard I use AI stupid shit just for yucks, just for the yucks. Mostly just for the yucks, but it's built into this calendar. You can import recipes from online. You can import your own recipes. But instead of sitting there and like groveling about what your meal plan should be for the week, right? You can just have the calendar. You can just have Skylight lay out and flesh out what your meal plan is going to be for the week. And then it'll even generate a grocery list of what you'll need from there. So the only mitigation that you'll do there is you might go through that grocery list and say, okay, well, we've got these spices. We've got these ingredients. We've got this. We've got that. You might scrub some stuff from it, but it'll automatically do all this stuff for you. And I don't care who you are. When you're a parent, you're trying to work, when you're a hardworking parent, you've got 3 kids, you've got a crazy household, you're trying to get other stuff done. Sometimes things like the meal planning becomes monotonous. Now, this might sound stupid to some people. Some people might say, well, that's just dumb. Like, you're just poor at planning or this, that, or a third thing. And yes, I'm not going to sit here and say that, that this is an absolute necessity. But I'm telling you, like, I'd rather take that mental load off of my wife and I's brain and not have to give 2 shits about it, to have it go, here's your meal plan for the week based off of, what we want. Maybe we click a couple buttons or whatever, but it does the rest of the work, lays it out and says, here's the meal plan, and it puts it on the calendar for the week. I will take that. That is phenomenal that I can have a thing do that for us and do the grocery list for us, so that instead of us sitting and doing manually a grocery list and thinking about X, Y, or Z thing, it just did it all for us. And that I can appreciate. It takes away a lot of mental load. It takes away a lot of prep planning time and makes it actionable. It's one way that I think AI can actually improve our lives, and we got to stop boogeymanning it, so to speak. I know that there's lots of concern. I know that there's lots of issues with AI, and I might have a broader discussion about it some other time. But it was just something that was on my mind. I think there's definitely beneficial things that AI is out there for us, and it's also a terrible fucking name for what it is, because like we say AI, like, and we're thinking, most people go to thinking Skynet. They're like, oh my God, my toaster's going to kill me. And that's not the case. It's not the case. Like, I think there's some beneficial things to some of this stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of uncharted territory. There's a lot of regulating and things that we got to do in terms of it, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all doomsday of the world, if you know what I mean. So, I think that was quite a load to go through. And I feel pretty satisfied that, I've talked a good amount of your ear off for this week. So, let's wrap it up. Let's say, hey, thanks for everybody. Thanks for tuning in this week. Again, as I say at the end of every episode, if you enjoyed it, give it a like, give it a share. All right, find us on YouTube, Substack, or on your favorite podcasting platform, and subscribe so that you get it every week that it comes out, except on the occasional week that it doesn't, like last week. All right, I'm human. Get over it, Jesus. But I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you chiming in, listening in, all of that good jazz. Want you guys to have a good week, and I will be back behind this chair next week with more to discuss right here on the Fall of Sanity.